For 8 seasons, Bewitched turned a suburban split-level on morning glory circle into one of the most beloved fantasy worlds in television history. A witch married to a mortal, a mother-in-law who could barely stand him, a nosy neighbor who never got believed, and an advertising boss who never noticed anything strange at all. The show ran from 1964 to 1972, and in the decade since, the people who brought to life lived stories every bit as dramatic as anything written into the scripts. Some found lasting fame. Some hid enormous pain behind the camera. Some didn't live to see how loved they'd become. Here's what actually happened to the cast of Bewitched. Elizabeth Montgomery carried the show for all 8 seasons as Samantha, the witch who chose to live as an ordinary housewife. She came from Hollywood royalty. Her father was the actor and director Robert Montgomery, and had already built a serious career in television drama before Bewitched made her a household name. That famous nose twitch wasn't actually her nose at all. It was created with scrunch of her upper lip, careful camera framing, and split-second timing, a small trick of the trade that fooled millions of viewers every week. Montgomery's personal life was full and complicated. She married 4 times. Her 3rd marriage, to Bewitched producer and director William Asher, lasted from 1963 to 1974 and produced 3 children. 2 of her real-life pregnancies were written directly into Samantha's story on the show. Her final marriage was to actor Robert Foxworth, and the 2 were together until her death. Later in life, Montgomery became known for using her platform to support causes she believed in, including AIDS research and LGBTQ rights. She stood beside her former co-star Dick Sargent at a Los Angeles gay pride event after he came out publicly. She died of colorectal cancer in May 1995, at 62 years old. She never lived to see the full extent of her legacy, but Bewitched has never really left the air, and neither has her performance. Dick York played Darren for the first 5 seasons, and by the time viewers were watching him deliver perfect comic timing every week, he was already living through a private nightmare. In 1959, while filming the Western They Came to Cordura alongside Gary Cooper, York was helping move a mechanical handcar for a scene when another actor unexpectedly let go of his end. York suddenly had to bear the man's full weight alone, and the muscles along his back tore. He described it later as the moment that started the pain, the painkillers, the addiction, the lost career. He kept working anyway. Crews built him slanted boards to lean against between takes. For a while it was manageable, but by the middle of the show's run, his back had degenerated into a serious spinal condition, and York had become dependent on the medication he needed just to function. Some later episodes were written so his character could remain seated or in bed for the entire show. In January 1969, York collapsed on set and was hospitalized. He never returned to Bewitched. York had married his childhood sweetheart, Joan, and the 2 stayed together until his death, raising 5 children. After leaving the show, York faced years of financial hardship. A failed real estate investment left him on public assistance for a time, but he channeled what he had left into Acting for Life, a charity he founded to help homeless Americans, spending much of his time on the phone raising donations of food and clothing. Dick York died on February 20th, 1992 at 63. The official cause was emphysema, the result of decades as a heavy smoker, layered on top of the back injury that had already reshaped his entire life. When York could no longer continue, the role of Darren went to Dick Sargent, who, in one of the stranger footnotes in television history, had actually been considered for the part back in 1964, before contractual obligations forced him to turn it down. 5 years later, the job came back around under the worst possible circumstances, and Sargent stepped into a role the audience had already bonded with someone else. He played Darren for the show's final 3 seasons. For virtually his entire career, Sargent was hiding something that could have ended it. He was gay, at a time when that alone was enough to finish an actor in Hollywood. Early in his career, he reportedly invented a fictional wife for the press to deflect suspicion. He had a long-term partner for more than 20 years, until the man died of a cerebral hemorrhage in 1979. Later, he was with writer and producer Albert Williams, who remained his partner for the rest of his life. In October 1991, Sargent came out publicly on National Coming Out Day. He had been diagnosed with prostate cancer 2 years earlier and worried people would assume, wrongly, that he had AIDS. He said he also wanted to be what he called a retroactive role model for young gay people. Elizabeth Montgomery stood by his side the following year when the two served as grand marshals of a Los Angeles gay pride parade. Dick Sargent died of prostate cancer on July 8, 1994 at 64, just under a year before Montgomery herself passed away. Long before she ever put on Endora's flowing robes, Agnes Moorehead was one of the most respected actresses in American entertainment. She had been part of Orson Welles' Mercury Theater Company, appeared in Citizen Kane, and picked up 4 Academy Award nominations across her film career. By her own account, she wasn't thrilled to take a network sitcom role, and she made no secret in interviews that she considered her earlier work more serious. She negotiated to appear in only about 2/3 of each season's episodes, so she could keep working on other projects, whatever her private reservations. She poured genuine craft into Endora and earned 6 Emmy nominations for the role. Moorehead was married twice, to actors John Griffith Lee and Robert Gist, and both marriages ended in divorce. She and Lee adopted a son, Sean, during their marriage, though the adoption's legal status was later disputed by different accounts. For decades, rumors circulated, some originated with her Bewitched co-star Paul Lynde, that Moorehead was a lesbian, but people close to her, including her friend Debbie Reynolds, maintained that this wasn't true, and biographers have found little solid evidence either way. She kept her private life largely to herself. Moorehead died on April 30th, 1974, at 73, from uterine cancer. Some who worked on the 1956 film The Conqueror, shot near a Nevada atomic test site, later wondered whether fallout exposure on that production contributed to the unusually high number of cancer diagnoses among its cast and crew, John Wayne included, though this has never been definitively proven. Whatever the cause, Moorehead left behind a body of work, from radio to Wells's films to Bewitched, that made her one of the most versatile performers of her generation. Marion Lorne played Aunt Clara, the sweet, endlessly scatterbrained which whose spells never quite went as planned, and much of that warmth came from an actress who had already lived an extraordinary life before television ever found her. Lorne was born in 1883, which meant she was in her 80s throughout her time on Bewitched, old enough to be the grandmother of most of the cast, though audiences rarely guessed it. She had a full career on Broadway and in London's West End decades earlier, largely performing in plays written by her husband, Walter Hackett, and had only started appearing in films and television in her late 60s. Lorne died of a heart attack in her Manhattan apartment on May 9, 1968, at 84, partway through the show's run. The producers made a decision not to recast Aunt Clara. The character was simply never mentioned again, an unusual move for a series about magical beings who could otherwise live for centuries. 10 days after her death, Lorne was awarded the Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a comedy series. She never found out she had won. Elizabeth Montgomery accepted the award on her behalf, one of the more quietly heartbreaking moments in the show's history. David White played Larry Tate, Darren's endlessly scheming, credit-stealing advertising boss, across all 8 seasons, and his real life carried a grief that stayed with him long after the cameras stopped rolling. White's first wife, Broadway actress Mary Welch, died in 1958 from complications during a second pregnancy. She was only 35. White raised their son, Jonathan, largely on his own before eventually remarrying. He loved the boy enough that he asked the show's writers to name Larry Tate's on-screen infant son, Jonathan, in his honor. On December 21st, 1988, Jonathan White, then 33, was among the 259 people killed when a terrorist bomb destroyed Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. David White, who had already been widowed once, was reportedly embittered and withdrawn in the aftermath, though he gradually returned to some social and theater work. He died of a heart attack on November 27, 1990, just under 2 years after his son's death, at age 74. His ashes were placed at Hollywood Forever Cemetery alongside his son's. Erin Murphy joined Bewitched at just 2 years old to play Tabitha, Samantha, and Darren's daughter, starting in the show's 3rd season. For a stretch of early episodes, she actually shared the role with her fraternal twin sister, Diane, a decision production made partly because hiring twins allowed more flexibility, with a young child's limited working hours on set. As the girls grew and started looking less alike, the production settled on Aaron alone to carry the role for the rest of the series. As an adult, Murphy has been married 3 times. To Terry Rogers from 1984 to 1989, to Eric Eden from 1993 to 1998, and to Darren Dunkel since 1998. Across her marriages, she's had 6 sons. One of her sons is on the autism spectrum, and Murphy has become a visible advocate for autism awareness in the years since. She's remained one of the most active former cast members at fan conventions and Bewitched retrospectives, and by all accounts genuinely enjoys being remembered as Tabitha. Alice ghostly joined the cast in the 6th season as Esmeralda, the nervous which whose magic tended to make things, including herself, accidentally invisible, filling the gap left after Marion Lauren's death. Ghostly came to the role with serious credentials already in hand. She won a Tony Award for her work on Broadway years before she ever appeared on the show. In her personal life, Ghostly was married only once, to actor Felice Orlandi, and the two were together for roughly 5 decades until his death in 2003. They had no children by choice. Ghostly found a second wave of visibility later in her career, playing eccentric Bernice Clifton on Designing Women through the late 1980s and early 1990s, work that earned her an Emmy nomination and introduced her to an entirely new generation of viewers. Alice Ghostly died in September 2007 at 84. Casey Rogers stepped into the role of Louise Tate, Larry's wife, partway through the show's run, replacing an actress who had left to pursue another career. Long before Bewitched, Rogers had a memorable early film credit playing the ill-fated wife in Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train. After her acting career wound down, Rogers reinvented herself as a writer, co-authoring several books, including one built around recipes tied to the series. She continued attending Bewitched fan events well into her later years, even while managing serious health issues, and remained a visible, affectionate presence in the show's fan community until her death in 2006. Alice Pierce originated the role of Gladys Kravitz, the perpetually disbelieved neighbor who kept catching glimpses of real witchcraft across the street for the show's first 2 seasons. Pierce was a Broadway veteran going back years before television, and she brought a physical, almost vaudevillian energy to a role built entirely around comic hysteria. What audiences didn't know while they were laughing at Gladys's shrieking was that Pierce had been diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer before the show even began production, and had been given a limited prognosis. She kept working anyway, delivering 2 full seasons of exacting physical comedy, while privately managing a diagnosis she told very few people about. Alice Pierce died in March 1966 at 48. She won a posthumous Emmy for the role, one of 2 Bewitched actresses, along with Marion Lauren, who received the show's biggest honor after they had already died. Mabel Albertson played Phyllis Stevens, Darren's fussy, easily flustered mother, for most of the show's run. She arrived at Bewitched already a veteran of vaudeville, radio, and film, having spent decades playing similar overbearing mother types opposite major comedic stars. Her younger brother was Jack Albertson, the Tony and Academy Award-winning character actor. The two had grown up together as the children of immigrant parents in Massachusetts. Mabel Albertson died in September 1982 at 81, not long after her brother's own death the same year. Maurice Evans played Samantha's Shakespeare-quoting warlock father in recurring appearances throughout the series, and the gap between the actor and the role was almost comical in itself. Evans was one of the most respected classical stage actors of his era, famous for his Broadway